There exists an old deception, one so insidious that it often passes unnoticed, the idea that evil is only found in distant enemies, in monstrous figures from history, or in the obvious wrongs of the world. But the truth is far more unsettling. Some of the greatest trials we face come not from strangers, but from those dearest to us, our family and friends. Do not mistake me. I do not speak against love, loyalty, or the sacred bonds of kinship. These are noble and good. But history, literature, and even our own experiences tell us that love can be twisted, loyalty can be demanded unjustly, and closeness can be used as a means of control. The demons that torment the soul often do not arrive with swords drawn. They come through whispers of comfort, through the pressure of belonging, and through the quiet erosion of virtue in the name of affection. Consider the friend who encourages indulgence over discipline, not out of malice, but out of misplaced kindness. The relative who demands silence when injustice needs to be spoken against, not for righteousness, but for the sake of preserving peace. The voices that urge us to abandon principle for the sake of unity. These are not always evil intentions, but they are often the pathways by which good men and women lose their way. True love does not enslave, it frees. True friendship does not demand the surrender of conscience, but strengthens it. If ever you find that the bonds of family or friendship are used to chain you to darkness, to silence your pursuit of goodness, or to make you less than you are called to be, then you must recognize that such influences, however familiar, are not allies but adversaries to the soul. We are not called to hatred, nor to the easy escape of abandoning all who challenge us. Instead, we must walk the narrow road of wisdom. We must love, but with discernment. We must be loyal, but only to that which is good and true. And we must stand firm, even when it is those closest to us who seek to pull us astray. The greatest victory over darkness is not to return its malice, but to remain steadfast in the light. Let no friend, no family member, no cherished companion lead you away from what is right. Love them, but never more than truth. Stand with them, but never at the cost of virtue. And in all things hold fast to what is good, for that is the surest path to both love and freedom. The greatest threats to our souls are not always external, but often come disguised as familiarity, comfort, and closeness. We often imagine evil as something obvious, an enemy in battle, a villain in a story, or a force that stands clearly opposed to all that is good. But deception does not always announce itself with a roar. More often, it arrives with a whisper. It wears familiar faces, speaks in familiar tones, and presents itself in ways that seem harmless, even well-meaning. This is why the most dangerous influences are not always those that declare war on our convictions, but those that slowly and subtly erode them from within. Consider how easily we lower our defenses among those we love and trust. In the presence of family and friends, we do not question motives as readily as we might with a stranger. We assume that those closest to us have our best interests at heart. And indeed, in many cases, they do. But good intentions do not always lead to good outcomes. A parent, out of fear, may discourage a child from pursuing a great calling because it seems too risky. A friend, out of loyalty, may support us in wrongdoing instead of speaking the difficult truth. A sibling, out of a desire for unity, may urge us to remain silent in the face of injustice. None of these actions may seem particularly evil, and yet in each case a subtle force is at work. One that does not attack us outright, but gently turns us from the path we are meant to walk. This is the nature of the hidden battle. It is not waged in great moments of decision, but in small compromises, quiet justifications, and the gradual acceptance of influences that shape us in ways we do not immediately recognize. A person does not wake up one day having abandoned their principles. They arrive there step by step, often through choices that, in the moment, seemed insignificant. And more often than not, those choices are shaped by the people around them. It would be a mistake to see this as a call to suspicion or isolation. The answer is not to withdraw from relationships or to view every close bond with fear. Rather, it is to cultivate wisdom and awareness. We must be discerning about the voices we allow to shape us, even when those voices come from those we love. We must ask ourselves, is this advice leading me toward truth or away from it? Is this influence strengthening my character or weakening it? Does this relationship encourage me to be better, or does it subtly pull me toward compromise? The most dangerous battles are not fought on distant battlefields, but within our own hearts and minds. And often, the greatest threats to our integrity come not from those who openly oppose us, but from those who unknowingly guide us down a gentler, more comfortable path. One that, in the end, leads us far from where we were meant to be. Love is one of the most powerful forces in human life, shaping our choices, guiding our actions, and forming the bonds that define our existence. It is often thought of as the purest of virtues, the highest of ideals, and the foundation of all that is good. And yet, love, when misdirected or corrupted, can become one of the most potent tools of manipulation, control, and moral compromise. The tragedy of human relationships is that love itself can be twisted, not always by malice, but by selfishness, insecurity, and a misunderstanding of its true nature. There are many ways in which love can become a chain rather than a gift. A parent may, out of deep affection, demand obedience in matters that require freedom, mistaking control for care. A friend may insist on unwavering loyalty, even when such loyalty requires turning a blind eye to wrongdoing. A spouse or partner may seek to bind the other through guilt rather than trust, using love as a justification for dominance rather than as a foundation for mutual growth. In all these cases, love is present, but it is no longer love in its truest sense. It has become a weapon. One of the most dangerous forms of corrupted affection is the belief that love should excuse or justify all things. Many people, in their devotion to family and friends, will tolerate behavior they know to be wrong, defend actions that harm others, or remain silent when they ought to speak. They do so not because they lack moral conviction, but because they fear that challenging a loved one will mean losing them. The desire to protect relationships is natural, but when love is placed above truth, it ceases to be love at all. True love does not demand silence in the face of wrongdoing. It calls for honesty, even when honesty is painful. Another way in which love is distorted is when it becomes possessive rather than selfless. Love in its purest form seeks the good of the other, even when that good requires letting go. But love that is tainted by selfishness demands ownership. It clings, controls, and resents anything that threatens its dominance. A friend who resists your growth because it takes you in a different direction than them does not love you truly. They love what you were when you were more dependent on them. A parent who refuses to let a child become independent is not acting out of love, but out of fear of losing them. Love, when pure, nurtures freedom, but when corrupted, it seeks to imprison. To recognize when love is being used in a way that weakens rather than strengthens requires great discernment. It requires understanding that true love does not seek to control, silence, or demand blind loyalty. Rather, it calls for honesty, growth, and sometimes even painful separations for the sake of what is right. Love, when rightly ordered, is the greatest good, but when twisted, it becomes one of the greatest dangers, binding people not in joy, but in chains. Recognizing the subtle influences of destructive relationships is only the first step. The greater challenge lies in standing firm against them. It is not enough to simply see where a family member, friend, or trusted companion may be leading us astray. We must also have the courage to resist, to set boundaries, and to hold fast to what is good, even when it comes at a cost. This is no easy task, for opposition rarely presents itself as a direct confrontation. Instead, it comes in the form of emotional pressure, quiet disapproval, or the painful weight of disappointing those we care about. The true armor against such forces is a heart that is rooted in wisdom, conviction, and an unshakable commitment to what is right. One of the greatest challenges in standing firm is the fear of being misunderstood. Many people equate love with agreement, believing that to oppose or challenge someone is to reject them entirely. This is why standing by one's principles can be so difficult in the context of close relationships. When a person refuses to participate in gossip, they may be called self-righteous. When they refuse to join in wrongdoing, they may be accused of being disloyal. When they speak uncomfortable truths, they may be seen as harsh or unkind. Yet none of these accusations define reality. The measure of true integrity is not how well one is received by others, but how steadfastly one remains aligned with what is good and true. Strength in the face of negative influences does not mean responding with hostility or arrogance. Many people, when faced with pressure from loved ones, either give in completely or respond with bitterness and anger. But neither of these approaches leads to true victory. Giving in results in compromise, while anger only deepens division. The real test of character is in holding firm with grace, remaining steady without becoming cold, speaking truth without cruelty, and standing apart without isolating oneself completely. A person who walks this path will find themselves at odds with many, but they will also become a source of quiet strength to those who are seeking the same truth. There will be times when standing firm means walking away. Not all relationships can be salvaged, and not all influences can be reasoned with. If a person persistently seeks to manipulate, control, or lead another into compromise, then separation may be the only choice left. This is one of the hardest realities to accept, for it means that love alone is not always enough to preserve a bond. True relationships must be built on mutual respect, and where that respect is absent, the connection becomes a battle rather than a blessing. In the end, the path of wisdom is not an easy one, but it is the only one that leads to true freedom. To stand firm is to endure discomfort, to accept misunderstanding, and to walk alone if necessary. But it is also to live with integrity, to be a light to others, and to hold fast to the truth, no matter the cost.